I think often we hear about how forgiving others is a gift to ourselves, and you just outlined some reasons why. You also mentioned how self-forgiveness helps other people, and so the kind of the reverse process there. Can you talk about how self-forgiveness helps others?
Sure. When we think of something like we do something and we're so filled with shame, we're so filled with regret, and we're so down on ourselves and we're punishing ourselves repeatedly. There's something called rumination, deliberate rumination. And here's where you're going over something so you make some meaning out of it. And that's beautiful. But at some point, you want to take that lesson and use it for good. So if you learned the lesson you were supposed to learn from that mistake that you made, I just really feel like it's almost an obligation. How do you not pay that forward and teach people, so they don't make the same mistakes, or at least make right with whoever you hurt if you can, whatever you can do to right that wrong. If helping others, if it served anyone in any way, you sitting there filled with shame and regret, okay, go for it. But it doesn't. It's a waste of time. Learn from it and serve others because of what you've gained.
I think that's great advice. Now, you talk about how when people do make progress, of course, it's sort of the layers of the onion, and it's a process. What about people that make change that I think this often happens and then they reverse on themselves when they really are making progress and they want the change? Can you talk about why people would do that and go back on themselves after they're starting to gain ground?
Sure. And again, that's what the TEDx was all about. And I use these examples and you'll see it clearly through these. Like here, imagine one of the examples I used was a busy working mom would get up early and go to work. And after she fed the family and took care of everything she needed to, and she'd go to work, come home, make dinner, clean up over and over and over again. And she was eating because she was miserable, gaining a lot of weight. So we start working together to get the weight off. And I know it's always more than that. And all of a sudden, she realizes that, holy smokes, if I get this weight off, I'm going to realize that I settled for a job that I don't like, and I'm not even sure I'm in love with my husband anymore. Well, that's a big realization. So for her, it was so much easier to go back to the old way of eating so she didn't have to look. I use this other example, another woman, top of her game. I mean, she was just in her field at the very top, but she sees me because her energy is down. So we do a couple things to get her energy back up, and the energy's up, and so is her clarity. And so she realizes she hates what she's been doing. Now, she's spent 25 years climbing this corporate ladder in a field she chose just to please her parents, never had a family, never got married, never had children because she was married to her job. She realizes, I hate this. I hate this. What the heck do I do? This is all I know. This is all I've done.
Yeah,
it's too big to see. So she doesn't realize it, but she stops going to the gym and sabotages her success. So I found in my work that when you see something that's going to require a whole bunch of change, if you really face it, that's why we do that. So you can be doing beautifully in weight loss, in business, in relationships. And when you sabotage yourself, it's for a very definite reason.
Wow. And you talk about changing our beliefs that are holding, that's the key to lasting change that we want for ourselves. So how can we dismantle old beliefs that don't serve us once we get to this realization that, okay, I'm now going forward. I'm going to try to make this change, and I want the best chance to stick with it.
Well, again, we have to see what's underneath there. I always use this image of an iceberg. 10% of the iceberg is above the water and 90% is below. What's wrecking the ship isn't the 10% above, it's the 90% below. So what I would recommend is really finding out what's underneath. And an easy way to do that is ask yourself these 3 questions. You ready?
Yes.
It's not questions, it's actually statements. Present these 3 statements to yourself. I'm so ... I can't ... I'll never ... And when you have some time, write it out. Just free flow it. See what shows up. You're going to see those blocks. Like you may find, I can't ever have a loving relationship, or I'll never be out of debt, whatever it is. And you'll realize now that the way the mind works is it'll do everything to prove you right. So if you have a belief, I'll never, I can't, whatever, you'll find confirming evidence to support that belief all day long. And we have something like, 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. You will have thousands of thoughts all day long confirming that belief.
Now, do you have people that you work with that you find avoid those exercises for fear, say, of making them, the obstacles, more concrete by validating them because they're writing them down and they're looking at them?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, everything I do is sort of very in your face.
Fellow New Yorker.
Right. Because I tell them, for you to do what you've been doing, you don't need me. You got that. You know how to do what you've been doing already. So I'm going to show them everything. And then it's always a choice. And I see it so often. It's almost like I picture, here we are on the shore, and there's this magnificent, wonderful island that has everything that you want. And I'll see somebody swimming out there, and it looks so good and it's so beautiful, but then they get afraid and then they swim back. And they'll do that for a lifetime. And if they just realized, there's your comfort zone where you keep turning around, but if you hang in there, every single thing you want is right past that. Just keep going. But we stay with what's familiar and comfortable, even if it stinks, just because it's what we know. And so I really challenge everybody to look at things where they say, oh, well, that's too scary. It's not too scary. It's just unfamiliar. Just like everything else ever was before you did it. Same thing.
Now, one of your techniques for making those critical changes and making them last is something you call building bridges. Mm-hmm. What does that have to do with changing our beliefs?
I love the idea of affirmations, and they're wonderful if they make sense to you and if you can really grab onto them. But let's just take a 400-pound woman. And if she starts saying, I'm a lean, mean 125, well, her mind's like, no, you're not. And kicks it right out. So I do something else called building bridges. And building bridges is a believable statement that your mind can grab onto. Because what happens is we have these like tracks laid down in our brain, these neural receptors and these tracks, and we keep reinforcing them. So that 400-pound woman says, I'm so fat, countless times a day, countless. She's not even aware of a fraction of the amount of time she says it. So for her to say, I'm a lean, mean 125-pound machine, her mind's like, no, you're not. So a bridge is a believable statement she can grab onto. So now let's say she starts eating healthier. It's believable for her to say, I'm eating healthier every day. I'm eating healthier every day. So if every time she says, I'm so fat, if instead she says, I'm eating healthier every day. Now, of course, she's not going to remember this at first. It's a process. But if she commits to this through repetition and consistency, eventually she's going to start replacing I'm so fat with I'm eating healthier every day, because it's true. It's believable. And eventually what's going to happen is she's actually laying down a new track. And over time, she reinforces that track. And that's literally how you change your mind.
That's powerful. You talk about also, in addition to creating bridges, you talk about creating a target at which we can aim to redirect our lives. How can we do that in this process?
So, I think so often we have this fuzzy sort of goal we can't even see. Like, oh, I want to feel good. Well, who doesn't, right? We all do. But I look at it like, well, I do this process. It's a visioning process that I do. And it's in the book and in the workbook too. And I do this with groups, and I do it with my private clients. And it's a way to see who you are at your physical, mental, and emotional best. So you actually see the version of you that is your best and highest version. And the beauty of that is once you see that version of you, there's no sort of fuzzy, what does it look like? What do I do? You know exactly what it is. And that's your bullseye. So then we track back and say, okay, for you to look like that, what did you have to do to create that? For you to be doing that work, what did you have to do? For you to be in those relationships, what did you have to do? So it really is, it's a way to just get there so much quicker. younger. And I've done this with clients. I remember one, I was working with her from San Diego, and so she tells me, we do this process over the phone, a FaceTime or whatever, and she explains exactly what she looked like. We were also friends on Facebook. So a couple months later, she posts a picture of her. Hey, what do you think of my new do? And I didn't want to call her out on Facebook, but I got chills because that picture of her was exactly what she had talked about months earlier. So I texted her and I said, do you remember that visioning exercise that we did? And all of a sudden, like 10 minutes later, I get back, OMG, and like 10 exclamation points, because she had become. Because when you have that direct vision and that bullseye, you go right for it.
So is there any process that people need to go through when they are acting as if they are the best version of themselves already, mm-hmm. to overcome their inner critic so that it doesn't say, as you said, without a bridge, making mm-hmm. too big of a leap, no, you're not, or that you're a fraud or something like that? Is there a trick to getting our inner critic on board or dismantling that?
There are so many, and it really depends on, I found so many different strategies work depending on you. Like there's one, and this worked beautifully with a few of my clients. I remember doing this. They loved it, where you actually give that inner critic a name and a face and a personality. And you just name him or her the ugliest name and make them look, horrible and whatever it is you need to do. Now think about it. That, like, let's say we just call her some hideous name, and she's this, she'll be a woman, and she's this old, angry, bitter, miserable woman. No one else is talking to her. She has not a friend in the world, but she has you, and she has a vice grip on you. And I have people look at this objectively, like she owns you. Look at the power you have given this woman. And they look at her so objectively, and I'm like, this is who's running your life. Instead of, and they're like, how do I let her run me? And then they're able to sort of, tell her to take a hike, or I've outgrown you, or I don't need you anymore. So many different strategies depending on who you are and what works.
I like that. And I like that there are choices on how you can approach it too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you mean when you say choose your regrets?
Yeah. Regrets stink. They just do. And as we're making these decisions, I think sometimes we're so eager to get to a goal, and we don't think of what we leave behind because of it. Like, here's an example. I have 4 kids, and the reason why I've always had a home-based business is because I always wanted to work around their schedule. Mm-hmm. Now, the regret was, could I have blown up my business and been 10 times more successful earlier than I was? Absolutely. And I always felt like I had a foot on the gas and a foot on the brake at the same time. But the regret that I chose was, I'd rather not have my business as successful, but not miss out on raising my kids. So I think, we really need to take a look and say, okay, down the road, take a look where you'll be, and then look back. And would I be okay with saying it took a little bit longer to get my business up and going? Or would I be okay with saying, yeah, I missed out on those years, but I have this booming business? And for me, it was a no-brainer.
I love that, the concept of it, because it does help a lot of people to put things into the right perspective for the long term when you look back from where you want to be in the future. And especially, I think it helps working moms.
And no judgment here. There really isn't. And it could be, you may decide, hey, you know what? This business is so important, and it'll really take care of my family. Right. And that's a beautiful thing, whatever it is. And I really believe every mom knows best.
I agree with you.
What's best for her family. Yeah.
Whichever choice is made that the person is the path they're going down, it helps them when they get to those crossroads, I think, because no matter which way you go, those are tough moments.
Very tough moments. And throughout the years, now my kids are 22, 21, 17, 16. But I remember times that were just so incredibly challenging. And, or even, and I remember too, and this may serve everybody also, when there's something that I really feel inspired to do, but it's so hard, or something doesn't go well and I feel like giving up. I use these two tricks and they work on me. So I want to share. The first is I picture, here's this incredible idea, and now it's off there in the universe. And someone else was like, oh, that's a good idea. And they grab it. I'm like, oh, that was mine. The second one is I picture sitting my 4 kids down and just saying, you know what, guys, it was just too hard. And they're looking at me like, Mom, really? Too hard? That's it? And one of those two things gets me moving every time.
Now, talk about too hard. You're referring to if you didn't reach for a goal, that you're telling them, I just passed it up because I didn't want to try harder?
Well, and I guess, being in my own business for so long, and this is why I've decided I make a great mentor, because I've made every mistake there is, and I could shorten anyone's learning curve. But I've had massive failures in so many different areas. And after those mistakes, it's so easy to say, you know what, this is just too hard. Mm-hmm. Forget it. But something always kept me going, and just
got it.
Okay, whatever it doesn't look right, but maybe that wasn't the way to go, and try this instead, and try that instead.
Well, I have a question about the types of crises that we go through. Mm-hmm. You talk about self-induced life crisis and, for example, versus a midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. What is the difference there?
Yeah. And then there's the full-blown crisis. Right. There's just the life crisis. Well, a midlife crisis, that's really where we've, we're using those techniques, if you want to call them, food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, keeping busy, reckless behavior, something to numb and distract. We're ready for something so much bigger, but we're not willing to take a look at it. So we're using all of these things that could either work in our favor. Like I remember when it was, I was facing this midlife crisis, I became very spiritual. And for me, I just developed this amazing connection, and that was a wonderful thing. You've heard about other people choosing other, things that get them into trouble or whatever. And there's a search for something more. And when we ignore it, we're only making it worse. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that we've outgrown the experiences that we've had, or what we thought was enough. We're ready for more. And when we look at that and acknowledge it, and then say, ask ourselves, well, what could that be? What could it look like? It could be a wonderful time. When we try to avoid it, distract it, distance ourselves from it, we create a lot of havoc.
Let's see, I have so many questions I want to ask you, and I know we're not going to get to them all because we're coming up on time.
I speak quickly, so we're getting through a lot of them.
We are getting through a lot. You're good.
Yep.
I know a part of the process of making big changes in your life would have to involve not fearing judgment of other people, mm-hmm. not judging ourselves. How can we learn to truly not care about being judged?
I don't know if we ever really get to that point. Hopefully we do. I notice with each decade, it gets easier and easier. And I guess I'm so used to also hearing how crazy I am, even from, 6 dogs. I mean, that's just nuts. Or going back for Ph.D., at my age. So there are so many times I've heard how crazy I am. And if I stop to really take that too seriously, I wouldn't be doing the work I'm so uniquely called to do. And I think when people, though, they're saying it, they're trying to protect us, and it's all well-meaning, but if we listen to it, it can hold us back. It really can. I remember a couple of years ago, I was putting on an event because I just felt like I should. And I remember being with a group of friends, and they were completely just out of love. Debbie, that's going to be too hard. Are you sure you want to do that? And oh my gosh, a full day of personal development and $97, that's too much. And I left there saying, I need to just cancel this while I still can. Well, luckily I was part of a mastermind group. We had a private Facebook page, and I remember coming back home and quickly typing out on the Facebook page, I'm thinking about quitting my event. And within minutes I hear, oh my gosh, one day it should be 2 days, $97, raise your price, it should be $197. New York, I wish I lived there and be there in a minute. And I was like, so fear's going to be there. Just, it's only, I look at it like it's only there to have us just take a look and make sure we're doing what we need to do and then do it anyway.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it also speaks to the importance of being mindful about the people that you surround yourself with when you have a dream that you're going to go after.
Oh yeah. And in these kinds of scenarios, well, there are varying levels, right? There are the people who they have our absolute best interest in mind, but they're coming from their lens. They can't see through any other lens. So it's coming from a place of love. Then I talk about the crab bucket.
Yep.
If you've ever seen a bucket of crabs, you don't even need to put a lid on the bucket. They are so happy, just swarming around the bottom. But then there's always that like hopeful crab climbing up the side, and think about what you see. You'll always notice one of the crabs from the crab bucket at the bottom, grabbing hold of the hopeful crab and pulling it back down, because it's like, you know what, if I'm stuck here, so are you. And we have to be very aware of who we're spending our time with. I'm part of a group and I fly across the country a few times a year. They terrify me, but they help me grow. And I wouldn't do nearly the things I'm doing if I didn't push myself to that level.
Yeah. I love it. And, I should have brought it. It's on my office door, but I have rainbow colored metal crab, and it's about this big, and it is at the very top of my office door.
Oh, wow.
Climbing up. And I thought, I should have brought that in here so I could wave it at you on screen.
Right.
I'll have to put it on the end cap of the video.
Right. There you go.
Well, Debi, who are you following now for your own growth? And how can our listeners follow you?
Oh, thank you. Well, really what I'm working on is it's all about the PBT Institute.com, post-betrayal transformation institute.com, anything having to do with helping women heal from betrayal. I follow so many people just in the health, the personal development, the wellness communities. And I try to learn from really everyone I come in contact with. I feel like everybody's got something to contribute. And then I just learn and discard what I don't need at the time, shelve what I don't need, assimilate the rest. And I don't ever believe in not learning. I think we need to continuously. There's so much to learn.
I agree 100%. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your insights with our listeners today. And please keep in touch with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.